The first thing you want to do is to go ahead and mark your seam lines. I'll advise you start with a paper rather than a fabric. Now get your A4 size paper or whatever paper you have available with some marking pens or pencil. Mark your seam lines to serve as a guide. Ensure to make it straight line. As you develop a relationship between your hands, your fabric and your machine. I will share with you a few key things that will help you get there faster. Hello and welcome to another video. This time we will be doing some sewing basics. Yes, sewing a straight line. This video is in favor of anyone who doesn't know how to sew a straight line. My name is blessingettoa. Do click on the subscribe button below to be subscribed to my channel. Click on the notification bell to stay up to date with every activity on here. I want to encourage and let you know that everything is possible when you believe. You can do anything you set your mind on. With the right attitude and right steps, you are closer to getting it done. Just stay positive. Avoid self-hate as it causes you to hate on others. Now let's get right into this video. Sewing a straight line is either as easy as you think or a little more difficult as you think. It all depends on you. Now I have made you some guidelines on a paper to practice your straight sewing skills. In this paper, you're going to practice how to sew on straight lines, sew some curves, sew round circle, some curves still, and whatever shape you want to sew on. This is an A4 size printing paper with a marking pen. You can go ahead and make these guidelines for yourself for your daily straight sewing practice. The first thing you want to do is to mark your seam lines. I'd advise you first practice on a paper, then a fabric. Use any paper you have with a marking pen to mark your seam lines to serve as a guide to ensure straight sewing. Make sure to also test the marking tools in a scrap of fabric to ensure it will wash out before using it on your project. Sit straight up in a comfortable position. Hold the machine close to the edge of the table or close to you so you don't have to stretch your arms. Place your foot pedal on a spot on the floor where you can sew straight. The next thing you want to do is to set your machine speed control lever to slow and increase as you go when you are comfortable to focus on the seam allowance. Use the seam allowance on your machine since they are a guideline to aid you sew straight. When you check on your machine thread plates, you will see some seam allowance marking. You have the 3/8, 5/8 and 7/8. The 5/8 right here is the basic seam allowance for sewing. The seam allowance lines are a guideline to aid you sew straight. If you find it difficult to focus on the seam gauge on the thread plate, it is best to use this painter's tape or a note stick to mark the seam allowance on the spot to serve as a guideline in your sewing. Also, take your eyes off the needle. Watching your needle go up and down your fabric and thread plate will leave you with wavy stitch. Rather, watch the fabric go through this guideline. Now I'm going to show you with this sample I marked out on this paper. For this tutorial, we are not using any seam allowance. I just want to show you how to sew a straight line. So place your paper or fabric under your presser foot. Turn on your machine. Lower your presser foot lever. Make sure the line is centered on the presser foot. Lower your needle right in through the line. Like that. While you sew, make sure you don't pull. Begin to sew. Your hand is placed there as a guard. Try as much as possible to sew on the line. So that's it. Let's see the first sample. I've been able to sew a straight line. Try the second sample. Place your paper or fabric on your machine throat plate. Lower your presser foot by pressing your presser foot lever. Lower your needle, making sure your needle goes right into the line. Now before you begin sewing, make sure to use a backward stitch to lock up your stitch by pressing this backward stitch sign right here. Now it begins to sew backwards, as you can see. That's locking the stitch in place. And then begin to sew forward. Try not to pull your fabric. Let your hand be there as a guard. When you get to the end of your project, you do another backward stitch. Raise up your presser foot and take out your fabric or paper. Now you see the second sample, we have another straight stitch. Now I'm going to do the third one and I'll leave you to do the rest. The same process. Lower your needle to ensure it's in the right place. Do a backward stitch. Begin to sew. When you become comfortable with your lines, you can increase your speed as you go. And you'll still end up with a straight line. So I'll leave you to do the rest. Next thing I'll show you is how to turn corners. I made this square and rectangle markings to be able to show you how to do it. Place your paper or your fabric at this corner right here. You lower your needle. You do a backward stitch and begin to sew. You begin to sew like you sew your normal straight stitch. When you get to the corner where you have to switch to the next lane, what you do, you lower your needle to the last point, leave your needle down into your fabric or paper, you raise your presser foot up, with your needle still in your paper, you tilt your paper or fabric a little. And now this other corner is aligned on your presser foot. You drop your lever and begin to sew. Now note that you don't raise your needle while doing this process. You leave your needle down into your fabric or paper. Only raise your presser foot and tilt your fabric or your paper a little. We are getting close to another edge. You can slow down at this point. Put the needle down, raise the presser foot, turn your paper or fabric, and begin to sew. Remember, we are not pulling, we are just guarding. We are close to another edge. Raise your presser foot, make the little turn or spin, your needle down, begin to sew. You can increase as you go. And when you get to the last point, here you can do a backward stitch. That's it. Raise your needle, raise your presser foot, and take out your fabric. This is what we have. Now I'll leave you to do this other one. What I want to show you is how to sew round circles. The same process. Drop your presser foot, lower your needle. You're going to guard your fabric or paper in circle form as you go. So let's begin to sew. And then you do a backward stitch here. Raise your needle, raise your presser foot, and take out your fabric or paper. This is what we got. A clean circle. Now I'll leave you to do this other one and show you this right here. I made a triangle and another funny shape, I don't know what it's called, but just to show you. The same process is required. Lower your presser foot, lower your needle into your paper or fabric. Begin by doing a backward stitch and begin to sew. You may need to replace your needle to be able to sew on a fabric because this paper should have gotten it blunt. You are getting close to the corner. You lower your needle, raise your presser foot while your needle is still lowered in. You spin or turn your fabric a little, lower your presser foot, begin to sew. You can increase your speed as you go. Same thing, round. Backward stitch. So that's it. I hope this tip is helpful. I'd leave you to do this and the others as an assignment. I'll quickly show you how to use the stick note. Now it depends on how thick your fabric is. You just want to take some amount of stick notes, place it on where you have the seam allowance you wish to sew. I'll place it right here on this 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Follow the guideline, stick it to your machine, follow it down. Now you take your fabric or your paper and place it. While sewing, make sure your fabric is aligned to this point where you have the stick note. Lay your fabric down, drop your presser foot, lower your needle, begin with a backward stitch, and then begin to sew. Making sure to focus on the seam gauge, not your needle. When you get to the last point, you do your backward stitch, raise your presser foot and take out your fabric. With this, you know you have 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Now I'll show you how to use the painter's tape. It's still the same process as the stick note. You take your tape, place it on the measurement you want to use, the 5/8 of an inch right here, and take it straight down. You can actually leave this permanently on your machine and use it as a guideline to sew until you're able to do without it. Now you also take your fabric or your paper lay it down. Make sure it aligns with the edge of the painter's tape. Lower your needle, begin with the backward stitch. Now begin to sew. While sewing, let your eye be on the marking tape to be able to guard your seam allowance. When you get to the edge, you do your backward stitch, and that's it. I hope this tip is easy enough. You now have a straight line sew with a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. If this video is helpful, do give me a thumbs up. Leave your comments, questions, and suggestions in the comment section. Do subscribe to this channel to see more interesting and exciting videos. And until my next video, do have a pleasant day.